I didn't get a label offer, so I made it work myself. And then they're like, well, why did you put that out and not wait to talk to a label? And then it's like, oh, you're too independent to sign. It's like, don't you dare tell somebody that made something work for themselves that they are the problem to why they're working but not working in the way for you. Like, that's gaslighting, that's abuse, and that's dangerous, and that's hideous. Shut the fuck up. You know, then you have like Decat's point, like, oh, you don't have enough TikTok followers to be considered for this fucking gig that you can probably sell out on your own. You don't have enough likes on this photo of a fucking ice cream. Like, who cares? Who cares about any of this? You haven't written with this other co-writer for this like potentially successful copycat artist for somebody else, but they might not even get signed, but they might. But, you know, it's like all of these people is just noise. It's deafening noise. And that is designed not to give you joy, unless you're the person behind the scenes at the label that's reaping the benefits. Like that, those systems do not give artists joy, I believe.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Hey, it's Larry Flick. Welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk Music. This is one of my favorite things to do because I spend a big part of my day on the VERO platform, particularly the VERO Music platform. And I have the best time talking about music with musicians and fans and all kinds of folk who have the same passion for music that I do. So to get to do a show that is about music is such a thrill, such an honor. And I'm really pleased that you stopped by for a visit. We're going to talk about something very challenging today: success and failure. And how do the two inform your music? And how do they inform the way you listen to music? How do they inform the way music is made? We're going to get into all of that with our panel of guests today, starting with a dear friend of mine, Kathryn Gallagher. She won a Grammy as part of the company for Jagged Little Pill. They won Best Soundtrack Album last year. And she was nominated for a Tony for playing Bella in that show on Broadway. She also released a series of singles during lockdown that were completely DIY. So we're going to get into that with her. Then we're going to talk to James Flannagan, a performer, a songwriter, and just the sweetest guy. He is known perhaps by some as a one-time member of the band Stiff Dillons, but many will know him as the writer of some big songs by artists that include Kodaline and Andrew McMahon, and he's just the dearest man. Very, very in touch with all the emotions that go to making a great song. Then we're going to talk to Rod Thomas. You know, there's always a Welsh connection on this show. I am very lucky to say that I gave Rod Thomas his very first American radio airplay for his band Bright Light, which has gone on to have huge global success. He has toured with Elton John. In fact, he's recorded with Elton John and Cher. And he's one of those guys who is forever doing it 100% by himself. I've never seen someone work harder than I've seen Rod Thomas work. And then, of course, my co-pilot in all things Let's Talk Music is Pete Winfield from Until the Ribbon Breaks. And no doubt he's going to have a lot to say about all of this.
What is your favorite pick-me-up track? I'm going to go Kathryn first.
Obviously, it's going to be Taylor Swift, and obviously the Taylor Swift song is Cruel Summer.
It's obvious.
Obviously.
I like that song.
Good song. I mean, that bridge, I'm sorry, it's perfection.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. James.
All right. It's probably got to be the record that's been on my record player for like a year. So I'm going to say the Yeah Yeah song by The Flaming Lips.
Amazing.
It's as hell. Yeah.
Love
Good
it.
one.
Rod?
Mine is Meryl Streep's opening song from Death Becomes Her called Me, which she performs in the fake Broadway hit Songbird. And she performs like what is probably one of the absolute worst songs ever written. And it's perfection. It's hilarious. It goes from like drama to camp to like, ooh, ooh, and it's perfect. Everybody in the whole world should listen to that song every single morning.
I just fell in love with you.
Wow.
I think
I'm
we all
ridiculous. Welcome to my
love
world.
Rod. We all
That was
love Rod.
amazing.
Wow.
Okay, all right, Pete, it's your turn. What's your pick me up song?
Also, how good is Death Becomes Her?
It's amazing. It's
Oh my
perfect.
God. I've got to watch that again. Wow.
Yeah. The only thing wrong with that film is that it finishes. That's the only thing wrong with it.
Okay, I think I'm going to go. It's always been since I was a kid. Is Everyday People. Sly and the Family Stone. I absolutely love it. Actually, it gives me chills even talking about it. The chorus. I've tried to figure out why, when that chorus hits, you just feel like you've eaten loads of sweets. But I can't, I can't do it. It doesn't work. So, and it's better left anyway. So it's that.
Well, I love these selections. You know, I was having kind of a gray day here in Wales, and so I reached for a random Bay City Rollers song, and then found myself listening to them for 2 hours. So it's all about the teen idoldom today. All right, so we are going to talk about success and failure, but I'm going to argue before we begin that I don't think there's any such thing as failure, but rather a redefinition of success. And so my question is, how do you define success right now? Like on this day, what does success look like to you? Does it look like big hit records? Does it look like just feeling good about something? Let's start with James.
Yeah, okay. So this has been this has been evolving for a long time, and I don't want to make out like this is how I've lived my life, but fortunately in the last year, I'd say my idea of success has had to change a lot. And currently, I've thought about this, currently it's as vague as this. My idea of success is to authentically honor my values and desires every day. And that gives me an opportunity to get gratification every day. And I think I've needed the gratification, lest it turn into some masochistic definition of what success might be. So I think like authentically being in touch with my values and desires is my answer today. That's what it is today.
I like that.
Maybe my values are Ferraris and hit record. So
we shall find out. So Kat, what's yours?
There's this Dylan quote that I've loved since I was in high school that I'll totally butcher, but it's something like, if a man is successful if he gets up in the morning and goes to bed at night and in the middle does what he wants to do. And I think that has sort of been, whether or not I've actually achieved that being my definition of success, it's always been sort of the goalpost. And the only addition I would add on to that is like this, I came up with this saying in the midst of a really bad breakup that has sort of been my motto for the last several years, which is I just have to keep doing the next right thing. And I think as long as I can continue doing the next right thing, that every single day will feel successful if that's been accomplished.
So Rod, I've known you for many years. I'm looking into your beautiful home, which is covered in pastel and a disco ball.
Trinkets,
and so
paraphernalia, insanity. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And so, you know, I feel like you have a very light and philosophical view of what it all means.
Well, get ready.
That's what they call it. That's what they call a tee up, love.
Yeah. Set up beautiful for the flames to come. I feel like in the last couple of years, my definition of success has changed dramatically. And for me, especially given the world and the way that it is, it's about survival. So I feel like if I'm surviving and it's still able to make my work and that funds my survival, I feel like that's a monumental success, because I've seen a lot of friends struggle a lot with their careers taken away or stopped overnight. You know, people working in theater, music, live music, everything was like taken away, and very few people stepped in to support anybody doing that. So that mode of survival where people have worked, 10, 20 years for their career was just sort of like snipped short overnight. And that's not their failure. But their success was kind of like shortened or put on hold. So for me to still be able to make music every day and get up and work on music, for me is success, and that's not entirely through my own doing, but it is like circumstance plus my own doing. So I feel extremely successful to be able to continue making music every day and do something that means something to somebody like the queer community that I target a lot with my writing. So that's my definition of success at the moment.
Okay.
So Pete, you and I have been doing this show for a little while now, and we've experienced a wealth of humanity and personality and emotion through the people who join us. This topic seems to be making everyone nervous. Why do you think that is? Why does talking about success, and I'm always going to put failure in quotes, why do you think that makes everyone so nervous that they're laughing as they do?
That's an amazing question. I think it's interesting. One thing immediately that comes across is the cultural difference. Almost there's a British, like, we're not allowed to even consider the idea. Sorry to start that again, basically going with what Rod said, there's a massive amount of humility, I think, that's had to happen, being what's happened in the last few years, that is, if anything is good to have come out of COVID and the pandemic, then this kind of broad stroke humility, I think, has had to change what we think of as success and failure. But then, which is amazing, but I think there's just an inherent voice, like ancestral voice in our heads going, you will not fail. And just whatever the definition of that probably changes over time and culturally and societally, but I still think that's what tenses us up is embarrassment and shame basically around the idea of what failure or success is.
But there's something very interesting that in preparing for our conversation today that I've found that link all of you, and you may realize this or you may not, and it may be by design, but it feels like it's by design, and that is you're all independent, right? You all are choosing to travel an independent road because you're choosing to do things as you see fit as opposed to playing the game. So to me, that begs the question, how often do you adjust your expectations from what you do based on the fact that you've, whether it be by choice or by necessity, are on a very independent road? James?
How often do I adjust my expectations?
Yeah. Of yourself, of your work.
Now we're getting into the embarrassing, shameful, nervous part of what you were talking about, because it's just like, I feel like the shameful parts are like, I have lots of greed and self-motivating kind of propelling things that have led me through this independent path this long. And there's lots of things I don't want to talk about that have propelled me, and which I'll happily talk about here, because but like, I love talking about things I don't want to talk about. But I'm adjusting my expectations constantly, mainly out of fear. To yesterday's expectations changed like I'm some sort of impressionable puppy, because my manager came up with a very ambitious mission objective for us, and I believed suddenly things were possible, and that I was kind of in denial about the day before, just to protect myself from not achieving it. And I think it's happening all the time. But in this year, one major, seemingly semi-permanent or long-term change in my expectation has been realizing, because of my, I don't know if this is getting off track, but because of my physical and mental limitations, I've had to learn to be more delicate with these pangs of like, I have to be everything. And so yeah, I'm still as fickle as I've ever been, and I'm still wanting to be the greatest thing on earth, and then realizing I'm nobody, and then realizing I'm somebody. And that's the embarrassing thing, because being independent, I feel like I want to display integrity and consistency in my approach, not something fickle and ever changing. So I want to answer it, but it's changing every second, and I can't let anyone know.
So Kat, I saw you nodding passionately just now while James had been talking. So clearly something is resonating. What's resonating with you that he said?
Well, I think this idea that it is a sort of ever changing, I think one of the, most bizarre things about any sort of profession in any artistic field is that you constantly are like walking on a tightrope. It feels like, where if you misstep or your mind goes somewhere else, you are free falling into a pit filled with alligators. Like, it just feels like this constant, like, you have to maintain your balance and your like calm and your level head, and be able to go with whatever sort of like wherever the wind blows. Otherwise, where your mind can go is just like somewhat sort of devastating, because this idea of success, of accomplishment, every single time I've ever achieved anything that I thought would like fix any sort of problem of mine or any insecurity, I've just gotten a new insecurity after that. Like, every time I've ever hit the moment of like, wow, look at me, I did it, I let my mind wander, and I'm looking at someone else and I'm like, oh, but they did it that way, and now they have this. And it's like this constant, I think, especially being independent, your biggest battle is always with yourself. And it's always with your own inner demons of like, I'm not doing enough. My biggest fear is that I'm lazy. Like, it's the thing that makes me work harder than anything is the fact that I'm afraid I'm not working hard at all. And which is a fun gift that I give myself every day. But I do think it's this thing of like, when you don't have necessarily someone being like, hey, this is what you have to get done today, your biggest challenge is always going to be where you put your own brain. And I think if you flip that and make it positive, your biggest advocate is also where you put your own brain and your ability to adjust. If that makes any sense. I don't know if I answered that. It
makes perfect sense, but I'm going to push back a little bit, because I know you really well. And I know that here's the problem. I know all of you. So it's going to get good in a second. But I know that I know that when you were pushed off the Broadway stage because of COVID, you then went and put out, is it 2 or 3
Three
EPs?
EPs and a bunch of singles. Yeah.
3 EPs and 4 singles.
Lazy.
Lazy.
I'm very
And-
lazy.
And I want to note that all those singles came with videos.
Yeah. That I like did, by
you-
the way, like alone in like my kitchen, like on like a ring light.
I know.
So dirty.
I know. I saw the footage of one of them, the outtakes of one of them. But so what I'm pushing back on though is it a fear of being lazy or is it a fear of being forgotten?
Oh, both, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it's so funny. I was at dinner with one of my agents last night, who is also a friend of mine from high school, which is really an amazing blessing I have, because she's now seen all of my work since I was 13. And so she knows me quite well. And I said to her, I was like, yeah, I'm just thinking like if there's anything I can do to sort of make sure, I have these few weeks off. And she's like, we're talking about the next 30 days and you already have scheduling conflicts for all of it. Like you're not. And it was sort of this thing of, I think it's twofold. One, staying relevant is currency in our industry, or it feels like it. Whether or not that's true, I think, especially with social media, there's this like exact number to your worth, it feels, which is like devastating to put artists who are inherently self-critical and insecure people in need of validation through like having a number next to your name that tells you how important you are is literally absolutely the worst thing that could ever be done. And of course, knowing it means nothing and all of these things. But alas, having this sort of metric for, okay, how many people care about me today? Does this mean that the next time I'm ready to put something out, no one's going to notice because I haven't been available, I haven't been around? Does this mean that people think I don't take myself seriously? Do people think I'm just like going out and not like, I think I have this very big fear that people will assume I don't work hard and I'm handed things. And anything I can do to combat that is always at the forefront of my brain.
So, Rod, as you're listening to James and Kathryn, knowing that you've been in the game for how long has it been since you put out that first single? It's been about a decade, hasn't it?
12 years for the first single. I think that came out 2010. So my debut album turns 10. Oh God, the delivery. I'm so sorry. My debut album turns 10 on the 3rd of June this year. So Happy birthday. It's been a while.
So,
thank you.
Yeah. But so what I'm getting to though is that I was lucky enough to witness the evolution of your career and the fact that you would be the Webster Dictionary definition of a one-man band, in that you're a one-person creative machine. We've talked extensively about you sorting out your own distribution deals and taking all these different meetings and all this various stuff. Does that dexterity that you've had to discover within yourself and employ, does that change what you look at as being successful? Because you could be on a major label. You've had the loving attention of one of the biggest pop stars on the planet, Elton John. You've toured with Cher. You have a legion of fans, and you're still doing it by yourself. At one point, I have to look at that and think how much of that is by design.
It's not at all by design. I'm going to be brutally honest. Like, it's not. I have never once been approached by a label at all in my entire career. I have done everything. My struggle with success and failure is that, like, with everything I've achieved, and just to be like a real dick, like, I'm the only person that has toured with Elton, Cher, Erasure, Ellie Goulding, Scissor Sisters, John Grant, all these people. I'm the only person in the world that's achieved that. I'm the only unsigned actor ever perform in Graham Norton's TV show in the history of its TV life. And not a single label is interested in working with me. So
Why?
feel I don't know, Larry, and that's what I've really struggled with mentally. It's like, it feels like I could literally turn water into wine, and I don't know if anyone would care. And that the like damage that does to you and your brain is really like quite serious. So there have been many points in the last 10 years where I've really just thought, like, do they just really not like me? You know, do they really dislike me that much that they can see that even with my album like entering the midweeks at like top 10, like ahead of Beyonce, and obviously dropping down because of streaming, like not even that made any one person in a record label care enough to have a conversation with me. Like, that feels really shit. And I don't know what the answer is to that. And it's been like a real cycle of, you know, uplift and downlift over the last 10 years of like feeling like I've really achieved something and just seeing the literal dust balls of response to that. It feels crazy. And I don't like, I've written last year, I wrote for like 4 of RuPaul's Drag Race queens. I've done a movie score. I've done all this kind of stuff. And I feel really proud of what I've done. And there's still like not a drop in the ocean of interest from a record label, which feels so disheartening. I feel at a loss of like, what is wrong with me? I feel like an untouchable, you know, and that's very hard to sort of enjoy the success when you don't get the response from like the industry at all.
So I'm gonna ask you something. Because you do all of this on your own, and you do it obviously exceptionally well, because your records do well.
Mhm.
You're not sitting in an alley right now eating
Not yet.
eating out of the
Not yet.
garbage. Is there, knowing the industry as well as I think we all do, certainly as well as I do, being in the business for 37 years now, some labels won't touch on artists that they can't change. That they can't put their fingerprints on and say, well, this is how I made this band a hit. Do you think that's part of the deflection? Because I look at you and I think, this dude's got it down. And I've watched you from the beginning. And so I know how hard it is, but I also know I think you've got it down.
It's just difficult, Larry, when you feel like there is a definite, it's not even a glass ceiling, it's like a concrete ceiling to what you can achieve as an independent artist. And I'm sure like you other guys know this as well. There are moments where you see, you know, how much you can achieve and you can be so proud of it, and you can definitely like forge your own path, constantly changing because of, and especially because of COVID in the last couple of years, and like live stuff being taken away and all that kind of stuff. But then you see what one artist, like I know many artists that have like then been signed to a label for better and worse. But when that money kicks in and the marketing kicks in, you see them fly and you watch yourself struggle to run. And it's like wild, the difference of like visibility and reach. So like your message can be as strong as you want, but without the ability to take it to the people that need to hear it, it's very limited in the reach that you can actually have. And I've seen also like artists that I know signed to labels who have fans in much bigger artists, and then the much bigger artists can kind of do what they do but with a bigger budget, and then they fly. And you're like, I don't want to say that money is a limitation, but it really truly is. And anybody that denies that like the labels have a monopoly in, you know, visibility and marketplace power, like it's wild. The only success stories that people quote about independent artists is like people that were on a major, built a fan base, then became independent, like Pet Shop Boys, whatever. That's such an irrelevant example of an independent artist. Irrelevant. They were on a major label for like 20 years. You know what I mean? It's saying that like being independent is the new norm is actually like a disservice to us, because we don't have that initial cash injection that a lot of people had that buys you your springboard into the bigger audience that you kind of need. It's like, it's a very dense industry. It's very rewarding in so many ways. There's so many good things about being independent. I'm sure you guys have been able to work like on your craft in like a way that you're proud of and really interested in, and you don't have someone forcing you into like an avenue that you just really don't care about that much. But then you see, like, when you've done something you're truly proud of and really, really just like excited for it to go to the places, and you see that it just physically cannot do that because you cannot break down those doors of certain people, like that's a reality. And I feel like I have to keep changing my idea of success, knowing full well that that reality or something is something that I cannot change without a label coming on board to help me change that. Like, there are gatekeepers every single step of the way, and unless one of them just decides to want to help you, can't do it.
And it's even easier now than it used to be. Having been in it for as long as I have been, it used to be even harder, believe it or not. So, Pete, as you're hearing all of this, and you are in the throes of creativity, you're working on a new record, does this inspire you, scare you? All of what you've heard from our three friends here, who all have very interesting, very strong perspectives.
God, one of the things about doing this show, I knew today's episode would be like this. I want to pause it and just, we can talk for as long as we want and then reconvene. There's so much I want to ask and say and talk about everything everyone's saying. Like, Kathryn, what I love what you were saying about you mentioned a few times like your mind wandering and stuff, and for me, a massive change that has had to happen for me is making a distinction between me and my mind in that sense, you know, and that's come from changes in my personal life and specific practices and stuff, to be able to finally get to the point where I know that my front brain is like this petulant little child. Yeah. And it's gonna run around desperate for attention and stamping his feet, and I want to be everything in the world at all times, and I want it now. I know that lives here, and rather than being like, fuck, that's me, having to be like, all right, what do you need? Like, what do you need? What do you need to be able to go in the corner and let me finish this song? Mm-hmm. Like, I love you, but like, fuck off, you know? Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's what about, and then Rod, it's like, it's so hard to hear all that, because I see how much it, like, I can see it in you that that's such a struggle, and I have to believe that you're wrong. You know what I mean by that, though? Like, yeah. I'm doing the independent thing with support, you know. Mm-hmm. And I've been signed to. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, if I was a record label right now and I'm sitting in front of you and I went, what do you want? What would you say? Like, what is it that I've got that you want?
Support.
In what way?
In what way does a label normally support an artist? Like, I can do literally everything, but I can't do everything myself you know, I don't have a team around me. Okay. And so if a team can't do a better job than me, why do any of you have jobs? Is my thought. Right. Like,
so if I'm going to jump in here and say, you know, the issue again in working with a label is, how much of your control, your creative control, are you willing to cede? Because that becomes the negotiation. Yeah. Right. Because, like I said, you know, if you give the energy of, I know what I'm doing and you're not going to tell me what to do, a very selfish, less intelligent person is going to say, I'm not going near this guy because I can't piggyback on him.
Yeah, But also feel like it's very unfair for people to assume that I have that approach of like, this is my idea and I'm not going to move at all. Like,
I agree.
why is that my story? When is that? That's never in my career once been my story. I've never said that
Yeah.
to anybody, and I have never acted like that. And I feel like that's a preconception that people have about like independent artists. It's like, we won't sign you and then we'll write you off as unsignable because you don't want to be signed. Like, that's not my book. I didn't write that book. Like, I don't like that book. Unpublish it. You know what I mean? Like, that's your excuse of why apparently I'm not signable or something like that. I never said these words. I've
I
never
agree
said,
with you.
I collaborate all the time. I collaborate left, right, and center. You know, I'm good at editing. I'm good at taking advice. I'm good at giving advice. I'm good at co-writing. I'm good at tweaking and remixing and all this kind of stuff. And like, I have never said that my ideas are 100% the right. I don't think I'm right. I'm from a coal mining valley. I don't know anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I never said that I know everything about the world. Never,
No,
ever,
I hear
once
you.
in my life have I said that.
But
I hear you. I hear you.
Do you sorry, this is so dear to me. Like, I've been signed and dropped and signed and dropped and signed and dropped. So this is really like what you're saying is really resonating with me. So there's just, I think, I just want to talk to you forever about it. But Larry,
Well, we'll connect. We'll connect you
Mhm.
guys to have a conversation, a private conversation after we finish what we're doing. But I'm looking over at James, and I almost feel like you've kind of shrunk a little bit. How are you hearing all of this, and how are you responding to all of this? As a sensitive soul that I know you to be, this is heavy stuff.
It is, and I think I shrink when I'm going into my vulnerable mindset of trying to actually be honest with myself and find out how I feel about something. It's definitely not the inflated side of me that comes to a room like this, even though like I would try and prepare the inflated side. But yeah, I've just been, I obviously I'm a producer and songwriter, right? So I relate a lot to everyone here, but not in the same way maybe that Pete relates to Rod. Having said that, I feel like my only friends to relate to in this world, other than other producer writers, are independent artists. And so I fiercely will defend people like you, Rod, talking like that in a room if we were with other people. Like I feel like aggressively protective of that energy that goes into trying to live a free, satisfying, rewarding life. Because yeah, I chose to be independent on my path as much as I can be, and then realized I couldn't be an artist. But maybe like some other people, this all comes from trauma-inducing behavioral patterns. So it all comes from weird behavioral twitches that we're trying to utilize to make like a happy life, right? And that's why I'm so protective over people whose energies get abused or like unappreciated or cut off unnecessarily, or like you were saying, Kathryn, like quantified into a metric. Like that's why I'm so protective, because it is,
or just misunderstood. You know, I mean, I think what we're really talking about is misperception of and misunderstanding of an independent artist. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that that's an interesting part of it.
I think there is, in this specific conversation, I don't think we're all the indulgent people that a lot of people perceive it to be. I think there's something really beautiful about us trying to turn our madnesses into something beautiful for ourselves, and then perhaps even connecting with other people. And that's kind of why I said at the beginning that, that my idea of success has had to change, it's because so many of the rewards and risks and battles and pains have been uncorrelated. All it does is add to this chaotic reactionary brain I have as an independent person. And so I've had to try and find more of a daily reward system, you know, because I am, like saying, I am the child looking for the treat for existing. I need a reward for existing, I think.
Oh,
Well, I
man.
mean, to me, you're to me, that's a result-oriented person. I'm forever talking about my need, not even a desire, my need for what I call Scooby snacks, right? Where you just think, I've really I've worked harder than the average person for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with what I'm doing and everything to do with my self-loathing. And there's a part of me that gets really angry and thinks, well, where's my Scooby snack? And then I stop and I think, and it's what I want to ask all of you next is, do you, when you're in the throes of all of this, and it's a tough road, how often do you allow yourself to just breathe and say,
What? What do you mean?
I mean, when you enter the midweeks at High Rod, do you at least allow yourself a moment to say, hell yeah?
No.
Why?
No.
But why? Why? I want you to celebrate. Why don't you celebrate?
Very specifically because I know that the industry at large will not allow me that success. And I feel like that is not where I get my Scooby snacks from. Chart positions and stuff like that is not where I get my Scooby snacks from, or my streaming numbers or whatever. I know that system in place there is never going to allow me joy for that. So my joy comes from hearing somebody tell me that a song meant something to them, or being able to DJ and have someone respond to the song. Like, I've created other lives to my artist work that do give me joy, because I know that way that the music industry works is literally just gaslighting artists every single day. It's like, I didn't get a label offer, so I made it work myself. And then they're like, well, why did you put that out and not wait to talk to a label? And then it's like, oh, you're too independent to sign. It's like, don't you dare tell somebody that made something work for themselves that they are the problem to why they're working but not working in the way for you. Like, that's gaslighting, that's abuse, and that's dangerous, and that's hideous. Shut the fuck up. Then you have, like, Decat's point, like, oh, you don't have enough TikTok followers to be considered for this fucking gig that you can probably sell out on your own. You don't have enough likes on this photo of a fucking ice cream. Like, who cares? Who cares about any of this? You haven't written with this other co-writer for this, like, potentially successful copycat artist for somebody else, but they might not even get signed, but they might. But, it's like, all of these people is just noise. It's deafening noise. And that is designed not to give you joy, unless you're the person behind the scenes at the label that's reaping the benefits. Like, those systems do not give artists joy, I believe. So
no, they don't. I can tell you for a fact that they don't.
So I get joy. Like, if a person like you chooses to play my song on the radio, that's joy. That's something that a chart position can't buy you. If a person posts a picture of your record that they've just gone and bought from your store or a store, that's joy. If a record label posts that they've stocked my record, that is joy. The midweeks is not a moment to breathe for me. That's a breathless moment. That whole first week of release is like horrendous, breathless, depression, because it's gonna go tumbling down. Like, stupid stuff like, I don't want to monopolize, but just very succinctly, my last album was like a #1 dance album in the UK. It was like the number 20 best-selling album of that week. With streaming, it was number 145 in the charts. And you're like, awesome. So then nobody's even going to see that it was out, because it won't show up in any of the charts that anyone will literally look at. And they'll just see ABBA Gold, the best of Beyonce, and like, cool. Like, great.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, Kat, what about you? What do you allow yourself to breathe? and
No.
take in a moment?
No, I
No.
don't. But
Oh.
I do and I don't. I think that one of the things I've had to get a lot better at is like well, okay, for example, last year I got nominated for a Tony, which is this thing that is supposed to be like, hey, you're good at your job, congratulations. And I did not think it was going to happen. It was a surprise. I was in therapy during the announcements. Like, you know, I had just watched obviously a theme that I love, Taylor Swift, but I had just watched the Miss Americana documentary that morning, because there's that scene where she didn't get nominated for any of the big Grammy categories. And she was like, I just have to make a better record next time. And then, so I was sitting there on my couch being like, look, I'm not going to get nominated. It's fine. It doesn't mean that I was bad. I did everything right. I worked as hard as I could have. Like, I'm giving myself this whole pep talk. I go into therapy. I find out I get nominated. I was like, holy shit, how exciting. And then I was like, oh no, now I have to do it again. Like, now I have to, like, I've just accomplished this. Now there's another level that I have to keep going. And the next morning I woke up and I had just done an interview and I wanted to send it to my parents. And there was this comment, the first comment that came up underneath was, I was with the other nominees, some of whom were also from my show. And it said, I'm so happy for the other two, but I cannot sit here and listen to Kathryn Gallagher be excited about this when she like screams and like has the worst voice I've ever heard, and like she doesn't deserve this at all. And it was just like a paragraph about how drastically untalented I was. And I was like, how can a distinguished group of my peers decide that I am worthy of this nomination, yet like Wendy from Minnesota says I'm trash? And I was in tears for 2 hours about it. And so that was a moment where I was like, okay, I have to now readjust where I get my Scooby snacks from, essentially, because I was like, that joy did not do to my self-esteem what I wanted it to. Finishing a show does that. Doing a thing, like accomplishing, creating a thing, does that. But more than anything, like the most accomplished I've ever felt in my life has been a day where, like, you know, I just took myself to Cambria for the week and I would leave my phone in the room and I'd go for a walk and I'd write in my journal and I'd, you know, think about nothing career oriented. And at the end of those days, I sat down at dinner and I sat next to a man who lost his wife a month and a half ago. And we talked for 2 hours about his life and how he saw Janis Joplin before she was famous and he called her because her number was in the yellow pages. Like, that day felt far more successful to me than anything I'd done before, because I felt present and good in who I was, and everything else comes and goes. But I guess those are the Scooby snacks, the life stuff, if that makes sense.
Well, we need to kind of bring this in for a landing, and I hate to, because I can absorb the intelligence and the passion that each of you have for hours and hours and hours, because it's real and it's raw, and it's an honor for me and for everyone listening and watching right now to bear witness to what this all means. And so, you know, even though I don't make music, I relate to what you're all talking about, because, you know, I'm the guy who wasn't as cute as Andy Cohen, therefore I didn't get a TV show until I got to VERO. You know, I'm the guy who was fat and gay and didn't get, you know, those guests because that person only wanted to be around Jess Cagle, who's young and pretty. So I relate to it in a way that seems intangible, but for me is very tangible. And it's very emotional to share that, and very emotional to listen to all of you, because I think anyone who's ever gone out into the world and tried to do something with their whole heart knows what each of you are talking about. And they've walked that road. And those are the people who turn up at your gigs, who download your songs, who follow you on social media. But what I want to say on behalf of all of us who work really hard at what we do with our whole hearts, the reason why I wanted to have this conversation today is to let people know that when they say something stupid, like, I can't listen to that singer, or I don't really like that song because blah, 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 or isn't he like, you know, he's untouchable, all these different things, that there's a human being on the other side of those words. And they affect, I mean, I think if nothing else, we've learned from each one of you, and we've learned a lot today, but from each one of you, we've learned that those words and those perceptions are attached to human beings who feel them. So I thank you for being here and for sharing. And if I could magically give you a moment of exhale and joy, I would. But all I can do is give you the gratitude that I have in my heart for you. So thank you very much. Now, this, everybody, is what VERO is all about. It's about going in deep. It's going in with passion. And it's going in with safety, in knowing that you could have the conversation that we just had here, and no one's going to come for you. You're in a safe space. So please join us on VERO, and join us for another edition very soon of Let's Talk Music. I'm Larry Flick.
You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.